Tom Cruise fit the role perfectly. Top Gun was the beginning of Tom Cruise as a movie star.
Tom Cruise has completely flipped that narrative on its head. And honestly, people can't stop talking about it. His transformation has been making the headlines everywhere. And the more you dig, the crazier it gets.
Even at that young age, where he only had a limited star persona, the notion of Tom Cruise.
So now, when people are seeing him in this new light, the question that keeps popping up is, what exactly is going on with Tom Cruise? Is this just Hollywood magic at its finest? Or is there a deeper story behind this jaw-dropping transformation? So buckle up, because what we're about to dive into is something no one saw coming. What sparked headlines about Tom Cruise's transformation? People began saying that the unexpected changes in Tom Cruise's facial features became one of the biggest talking points after his Fox Sports pregame appearance. And many couldn't help but wonder if they were even looking at the same man they had admired for decades. Unlike his earlier public outings, his Super Bowl 2025 segment revealed what many believed to be a dramatically different look, and that alone became more memorable than anything he had to say. He had appeared on screen to help build excitement for the much-anticipated clash between the Kansas City Chiefs and the San Francisco 49ers.
The Kansas City Chiefs, a franchise coming off one of the most thrilling wins in playoff history.
Yet, within minutes, the focus had shifted. Viewers were no longer talking about the energy of his words, but rather about the striking difference in his face. And before anyone could stop it, social media was flooded with comments, debates, and endless comparisons. Wasn't it interesting, people asked, that his message was completely drowned out by the noise about his appearance? The Super Bowl, as everyone knows, is one of the most watched events in the United States. And when someone like Tom Cruise steps into that spotlight, every detail gets magnified. He had been expected to give a fiery speech, something uplifting to match the grand energy of the night. And he did deliver that passion, but his face told a different story, at least in the eyes of millions who watched. As clips of his segment began circulating online, people replayed them over and over, even pausing frame by frame, almost like detectives searching for clues. They pointed out what they felt were clear changes. Some said it was puffiness, others insisted it was tightening, and many simply said that it was not the face they remembered. Could it really just be age catching up with him? Or was there something else behind this transformation? Well, in this video, we'll find out the whole truth as we journey along in this video. So, keep your eyes glued to your screen. Now, soon enough, the reactions began to pour in, forming a wide spectrum of opinions. Some fans rushed to his defense, reminding everyone that he was in his 60s now and that aging was simply natural. Others went beyond defending him, praising his energy, charisma, and dedication, insisting that none of this should matter because he still had the same spirit he always carried. But then, there was a large group of people who expressed concern, saying that the changes seemed too sudden and too pronounced to be explained only by age. They speculated about cosmetic work, about procedures that might have gone too far, and even about the pressures Hollywood puts on its biggest stars to keep looking young forever. Wasn't that the real issue here? This never-ending pressure to stay timeless in a world that doesn't forgive even the smallest wrinkle? Medical professionals, though not officially commenting, added their own theories, pointing toward possible interventions that could explain what the public was noticing. The debate no longer stayed only about Tom Cruise. It spilled into larger conversations about how aging celebrities are judged far more harshly than anyone else, and how the industry's obsession with youth forces many into difficult choices. Supporters, however, reminded everyone of something crucial. Despite whatever was happening with his face, Tom Cruise was still the same man who insisted on performing his own dangerous stunts. A man who had proven again and again that he was still physically capable of things that most actors wouldn't even attempt. Did it not matter more that he could still run across rooftops, leap from planes, and hang onto the sides of helicopters? What made this entire discussion even more intense was the sharp contrast between his Super Bowl appearance and his recent movie trailers. In the promotional material for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, Cruise looked much more like the version audiences were used to seeing. His face seemed sharper, more familiar, almost untouched by the changes that had shocked people during the game. This difference led many to ask whether makeup, lighting, or digital post-production had played a role in keeping his on-screen image aligned with the Tom Cruise that fans expected. Could the carefully controlled environment of Hollywood have been hiding the reality all along? When people placed screenshots from the Super Bowl side by side with those from the trailers, the contrasts became undeniable, sparking even more questions than answers. At the end of the day, what had started as a routine promotional spot turned into a global conversation about beauty standards, cosmetic interventions, and the unrelenting spotlight that celebrities live under. It wasn't just about Tom Cruise's face anymore. It was about the way society reacts when the mask of youth slips, even for someone who has long seemed untouchable. Fans, critics, and casual viewers alike were left asking themselves the same thing. Was this really about Tom Cruise changing? Or was it about how uncomfortable people are when they see the reality of aging play out in front of them, especially on someone they once thought was ageless? And that's where things start to get even more fascinating, because once you begin to look closely, you start to notice the subtle changes. To stay with me till the very end to find out. How has Tom Cruise's face and smile evolved over time? Throughout his long and celebrated career, people have often remarked on how Tom Cruise's smile and facial features seem to change along with the stages of his stardom. Observers would say that his face itself told a story, almost like a diary written in expressions, photographs, and red carpet appearances. Many fans who had been following him since his earliest days admitted that they could see the gradual changes, some subtle, some more obvious, as the years went by. Wasn't it fascinating, they often asked, how someone could remain such a recognizable icon while still appearing so different from the way he once looked? It seemed as if his smile, perhaps more than anything else, became the canvas on which his image was carefully crafted over time. In the early part of his career, before the world crowned him Hollywood's favorite action hero, his teeth were far from perfect. People noticed what dentists later called a midline shift. His front tooth was aligned slightly to the left side of his face, rather than sitting neatly in the middle. This, paired with the natural asymmetry in his teeth, created a look that was less polished, but more real. Fans looking back at films like Risky Business and Top Gun often said that the imperfections gave him a boyish charm, a sense of approachability that made him relatable despite his growing fame. After all, didn't those little flaws make him seem human in an industry that so often polished away every rough edge? Photographs from the 1980s also showed discoloration and unevenness, but these same quirks made him stand out at a time when not every star had a picture-perfect smile. Things began to shift in the early 2000s, and for many fans, the turning point came in 2002. At the premiere of Minority Report, Tom Cruise appeared with ceramic braces at the age of 40, no less. Wasn't that a striking choice for someone already considered a global superstar? People commented that it showed a rare honesty, a willingness to address imperfections openly when he could have easily hidden them. After the braces came off, his smile was visibly straighter and more balanced, the kind of smile that matched the larger-than-life roles he played. Around the same time, whitening treatments brightened his teeth, giving his grin the polished glow expected of one of the highest-paid actors in Hollywood. Dental experts remarked that this was the moment when Cruise seemed to lean more deliberately into cosmetic enhancement, taking active steps to shape his image in ways that went beyond natural aging. By the time the mid-2010s arrived, however, people began to notice even more dramatic changes. Experts and casual observers alike speculated that veneers or crowns had been added to his already improved smile. These gave his teeth a more symmetrical look and uniform color, making them appear almost flawless under the camera's close gaze. Yet the transformation was not limited to his teeth. Commentators pointed out that his cheeks looked fuller and his skin tighter than might normally be expected for a man in his 60s. Could it be dermal fillers? Maybe other non-surgical treatments? The speculation grew louder as his public appearances sparked debates about how far celebrities go to maintain the image of eternal youth. Fans and critics alike found themselves asking questions that went beyond Tom Cruise himself. Was this simply the natural progression of someone aging in the spotlight? Or was it a reflection of the pressure Hollywood places on its stars to remain ageless? Could anyone blame him for trying to hold on to the face that had become a global brand? After all, wasn't it that same smile, whether imperfect in the early years or perfected later on, that had helped define him as one of the most enduring icons in film history? His evolution became less about vanity and more about a mirror reflecting the impossible expectations of fame. People often summed it up by saying that Tom Cruise's changing face was a story not just of cosmetic adjustments, but of resilience, reinvention, and the ongoing conversation about aging under the harshest spotlight in the world. They remarked that no matter how different his smile appeared from one decade to the next, it always carried with it the weight of his journey, his ambition, his vulnerability, and his desire to keep playing the roles that demanded a youthful spirit. But here's the thing. Experts believe there's a reason his look has changed so drastically, and what they're saying may shock you. Don't blink. Don't look away. Because this is where the story takes a turn you won't want to miss. Why do experts believe Cruise's look has changed so drastically? Medical professionals had a lot to say when people began debating the dramatic changes in Tom Cruise's appearance, and the explanations came from several different angles. Some thought the changes were simply the result of time, while others were convinced there must have been medical or cosmetic help along the way. After all, isn't it only natural for people to wonder when a familiar face begins to look almost unfamiliar? Experts from dentistry to plastic surgery, and even those who understand the toll of aging and stunt work, all weighed in on what might be happening with Cruise's famous face. Dentists, for instance, pointed out that his strikingly even smile seemed far too perfect to be explained by basic whitening treatments. They explained that what people were seeing was more likely the result of extensive dental work, possibly a full-mouth reconstruction. This, they said, would mean reshaping the very structure of his teeth rather than simply placing veneers on top. Such procedures, while subtle in some ways, could actually influence the way the face looked overall. Some wondered aloud if dental implants or bridges might also have played a role, since those can subtly shift the proportions of the jaw and lower face. And if something as central as the smile changes, doesn't that ripple into how the rest of the face is perceived? Plastic surgeons, on the other hand, leaned toward a different explanation. They believed the more noticeable differences were connected to the overuse of dermal fillers. They remarked that cheeks which appear unusually full and a forehead that looks almost too smooth often point to repeated injections over time. In their view, this might have taken away some of the natural, rugged lines that once gave Cruise his famously sharp look, replacing them with a slightly puffy or swollen appearance. They asked a fair question. When a face starts to lose its natural contours, does it really look younger? Or does it just look altered? For many, this possibility seemed to explain why his features sometimes appeared different from one public appearance to another. But not every professional rushed to the cosmetic explanation. Some medical experts argued that natural aging and the physical demands of his career could not be overlooked. They pointed out that Cruise was not only aging like everyone else, but also throwing himself into extreme stunt work year after year. Couldn't that sort of lifestyle leave its own marks on a face? They suggested that repeated impacts, the strain of action scenes, and even small injuries might lead to facial inflammation or minor shifts in bone structure over time. Recovery treatments for these injuries might also have caused temporary swelling or changes in his appearance. When one considers the sheer number of stunts he performs, isn't it reasonable to think the face could bear signs of that physical strain? Well, when it's all said and done, the debate around Tom Cruise's changing appearance seemed to circle back to one truth. There might not be a single explanation. Instead, it could be a blend of dental work, cosmetic treatments, natural aging, and the extraordinary physical demands of his job. And that raised another question people kept asking themselves: why did his changes feel so surprising in the first place? Perhaps it was because the world had grown so used to seeing him as a symbol of timeless energy and enduring youth. When such a figure begins to show signs of change, it reminds everyone that even the most iconic faces are not immune to time, choice, and circumstance. So what does all of this mean for his carefully built public image, for the way he has always been presented to us, and for the way we will remember him? Stick with me until the very end, because the answer is not just about Tom Cruise, it's about what his transformation reveals about all of us. What does Cruise's transformation mean for his public image? They said that beyond the physical changes in Tom Cruise's appearance, what truly stood out was the way those changes shaped how people looked at him and where he stood in his career. They explained that the whole conversation about his transformation was not really just about him, but about what it revealed regarding celebrity culture and what audiences expect from stars in Hollywood. After all, wasn't it interesting how quickly people's focus could shift from his work to his looks, as though one outweighed the other? They noted that fans often split into two groups when talking about it. On one hand, there were those who believed Cruise's decisions were simply his own way of dealing with the massive pressure that comes with being a leading man in an industry obsessed with youth, especially when the role is that of an action star. On the other hand, there were those who argued that maybe the interventions had gone too far, stripping away the very authenticity that once made him so relatable to his audience. But then again, wasn't this just a reflection of the bigger questions society keeps asking? How should actors age in an industry that doesn't seem to forgive aging at all, even for men who once had the freedom to grow older without judgment? They pointed out that in the midst of all these conversations, something even more remarkable often went unnoticed: Cruise's dedication to his stunts. People reminded one another that while critics debated his appearance, the man was still hanging off airplanes, racing motorcycles at impossible speeds, and performing the kind of dangerous sequences that most actors wouldn't dare attempt. At 62, wasn't it astonishing that he still chose to risk his body for the thrill of storytelling? They admitted that for many fans, this devotion to pushing limits overshadowed any concerns about what he might have done to his face. It was almost as if his work ethic served as a shield against criticism. Because when someone proves again and again that they can still do the impossible, does it really matter if they look slightly different while doing it? They said that even those who speculated about his transformation quietly agreed on one thing: his drive, his courage, and his discipline were still unmatched in Hollywood. And when it came down to legacy, they argued, there was really no contest. No matter how many conversations circled around his changing looks, none of it truly had the power to erase decades of blockbuster films that had already cemented his place in history. They reminded each other that Tom Cruise was more than just a face on a poster. He was a cultural force who had carried entire franchises and redefined what audiences expected from an action star. For most people, what remained unforgettable were the performances, the stunts, and the sheer energy he brought to the screen. And when looking at it that way, it's clear that Cruise's legacy as one of cinema's greatest action icons would remain intact, no matter how the years or the critics tried to reshape him. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.